With the 2013 Major League Draft next week, most people will look back at draft history to look at the players that their team drafted, the players that made it to the big leagues and became stars, and the many prospects that never even got to the big leagues. But what most people won't look at are the players that were almost drafted and instead went in a different direction, and how that changed history. Example, the Cincinnati Reds back in 1992, Bob Quinn was the vice president and general manager. He hired his own farm director in Howie Bedell and wanted to hire his own scouting director outside the Reds organization. Owner Marge Schott at the time did not want to go outside the organization for another employee and instead wanted to promote from within. As she debated internally, she was trying to decide between Julian Mock and Gene Bennett to be the next scouting director of the Cincinnati Reds. When she was done, she chose Julian Mock to run the scouting department. He would have full autonomy and work directly for Marge Schott rather than the normal chain of command, VP and GM Bob Quinn. So on draft day, Julian Mock had the 5th pick overall in the first round. The New York Yankees had the 6th pick in the first round overall. And the debate in the room continued. And the debate was between outfielder Chad Mottola from the University of Central Florida and Derek Jeter from Kalamazoo High School. Now, in the back table, I was an assistant in player development and scouting. My job was to make sure the scouting reports were in order, to make sure the magnetic boards in the draft order were put in the right place, to make sure we had food and beverage for everybody. Sitting next to me in the back table was Gene Bennett, longtime successful scout of the Reds. And he leaned over to me and said, "I'm really worried that Julian Mock is going to take Chad Mottola over Derek Jeter, and if he does, it's going to be a big mistake because Derek Jeter is the player we need to take, because he has a chance to be even a better player than Barry Larkin." Well, Gene Bennett should have known. Why? Because he scouted and drafted Barry Larkin, Paul O'Neill, Chris Sabo, and Charlie Leibrandt. When the discussion began, Julian Mock talked about his visit to see Derek Jeter, where he didn't play very well, made a couple of errors, and didn't swing the bat well. Gene Bennett asked Julian Mock, the scouting director, to come back and see him again, because you just didn't see him right the first time, he would tell him. Julian Mock said, "I don't need to see him anymore. I know the player I want. It's Chad Mottola. He's got 4 tools. He's got power, he can run, he can throw, he can field, and if he hits, he'll become Dale Murphy." Well, the problem is, Chad Mottola wouldn't hit. And because Julian Mock was a scouting director instead of Gene Bennett, the Reds drafted Mottola, while the Yankees were able to select Jeter right after the Mottola pick. Now imagine if Cincinnati had drafted Jeter, and either he or Barry Larkin became center fielders, and they both would go into the Hall of Fame at a different position. And the history for the Reds, the history for the Yankees, and the history of Major League Baseball would have been a lot different. Stories behind the scenes in the draft room. For ESPN.com, I'm Jim Bowden.